Dum da 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 dum 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 dum.
Hey up, John.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Baggy.
Hello.
Yeah. So it's the MNC podcast,
Absolutely.
and it's me, Ndukwe Onoha,
Councillor John Whitby.
and
Baggy Shanker.
Baggy Shanker. Right. So, Baggy, what do you do? Who are you? Why are you important?
Why am I important? I'll tell you who I am. I'm Baggy Shanker. I'm the councillor for Sinfin and Osmaston. I'm currently the leader of the council also, and I'm the parliamentary candidate for Derby South.
Oh, that's interesting. Packing all of that into one. How do you manage?
Sleep a little bit less, not watch too much telly, and work hard.
So, yeah, we've just passed the budget, Derby City Council. So I suppose the questions are around that. So, well, we've had, about 10 months now since we took control of the council. Are we doing the budget first, do you reckon? Should we ask about the budget first?
No, I think we should, as Baggy, 10 months-ish since we took control of the council. There was the Derby promise. How do you reckon we've done so far? Have you delivered on that promise?
I think collectively, all of us, the Labour group, the cabinet, the administration, have absolutely delivered on what we said we were going to do. The budget we've passed doesn't compromise on any of our manifesto commitments. We said we're going to keep all community managed libraries open. That's exactly what we've done. And we've gone beyond that. What we're doing is keeping them open for the long term as well. So there's a sustainable plan to keep them open. Importantly for you guys, I know in Mackworth, but for the wider city as well, we said we're not going to close Ashgate Nursery. So Ashgate Nursery is staying open. And let's not beat around the bush. Had we not got a Labour administration, some of our community managed libraries would be closed now. Ashgate Nursery would have been closed. We've also extended the provision for waste disposal. So now, a weekend on a Sunday, you don't need an appointment to go and take rubbish to Rangeway.
Is that from April?
From April. And we're also going to introduce tougher fines for people who are caught fly tipping. So we're going to make it easier for people to dispose of their rubbish. But those who continue to fly tip, we want to catch them and we want to penalise them. All of that in an environment where finances are really tough. The government continues with their austerity programme. Derby has lost about £1 billion since austerity began. The cumulative figure for Derby since Tory austerity began is £1 billion. That's a lot of money which should have been coming to Derby to deliver services. Whilst, remember, demand is always increasing. Inflation where it is, high interest rates, the cost of living crisis, councils are feeling it all across the country. We know more councils have now technically gone bankrupt, called a Section 114. More councils have done that than ever before. We just need to look at some of our neighbouring authorities. Nottingham City, Derbyshire County are really struggling. But we've managed to set a responsible budget for next year. We've massively reduced the overspend for this current financial year that we inherited from the Tories. £6.5 million, was the projected overspend for this financial year. And at the end of December, we'd got that down to 2.3 million, which is still an overspend, but it's massively less than what it was forecasted to be. And I'm hoping by the end of March, it's reduced a little bit further. That's really important because it gives us some headroom with reserves going into next year.
And just, people will probably have noticed the council tax has been set at 4.99, the increase, and obviously everyone's struggling. Obviously, we all appreciate that. And we've seen Birmingham set a council tax of 10%. I suppose just explain why we've had to go with 4.99?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things government presumes before you even go and ask them for additional money, and I've continuously been lobbying for extra money for Derby, is the first question on every call I've had is, well, have you maximised what you can get from local council tax? And if that answer is no, you may as well just put the phone down and come off them calls. So there's a built-in assumption from government that councils increase the council tax up to the maximum legal amount permissible, which is 2.99% plus a 2% precept for adult social care. So we're having to do that. Unfortunately, it's not something I was particularly keen on doing, but that was baked into the 3-year financial plan even before we took control. And I absolutely appreciate it. It's tough for people. Interest rates where they are now, due to you'll remember the Liz Truss budget, unfortunately. So interest rates are high, cost of living crisis is still there. And this all makes it really hard for families. So really mindful of that. But also what you've got to remember is the cost of services that we're procuring are going up. In some parts of adults, and John, you'll be aware, in children's care, inflation on some of those services is running at 30%.
And the pressure on the service is almost unprecedented as well. The number of children we're having to sort of, accommodate, etc.
So I just want to go back a bit because you mentioned the issue of fly tipping, because again, that's in our world, that's something that's really pressing and something we want to tackle. So how are we going to make sure that we tackle that, given the low numbers of officers that we have that are dedicated to that? How do we make sure that we're able to effectively tackle fly tipping?
Yeah, so what we're doing is, because we recognise that the number of PPOs that the council now has reduced, it's something, again, which was done by the previous administration, unfortunately. We're bringing in a private company who are going to support us in that work. So the way they earn their money is by identifying people, the culprits of fly tipping, of littering. They can then issue penalties to these individuals, and that's how they earn their money. So it will bring in for us additional capacity, additional enforcement officers who can go and investigate fly tips, try and identify the cause and the culprits, and then issue them penalties, which should deter them from doing it again.
So just to be clear, we are not paying for this. It's sort of like self-funding.
That's right. So we have to select and appoint the company, which we've done now. Mm-hmm. I think they again start at the beginning of April, and the way they make their revenue is by identifying the culprits, issuing the fines, and that's how they earn their money.
Okay. So this budget's pretty ambitious in terms of bringing down the overspend and still making sure that we maintain a level of service for the residents. I'm sure one of the questions I got asked is, can we stick to this budget?
Well, we have to. It's a responsible budget, and it will be tough, but the discipline that we've instilled since taking control needs to stay in everything we do going forward. So what we can't do is have a first quarter of overspend and then we're trying to manage it back down again. So we've got to maintain that discipline. And what I've also done, and make no apologies for this, is to try and put the council on a better, more resilient footing. So as well as protecting frontline services, what we're also doing in the next financial year is trying to build our reserves. So over the next 3 years, I want to put around £10 million back in to the council reserves to make us a more resilient, stronger organisation going forward.
Absolutely, because you don't know what's around the corner, do you? That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Good.
And street scenes. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the range. We've talked about people not needing to book on certain days. Well, what about the city centre? How what are our ambitions for that?
Look, the city centre is so important to Derby. Irrespective of which ward you live in the city, everyone's got an affinity to our city centre. City centres aren't the places they were years ago, where they were destinations where everybody would sort of come into at the weekend, during the week, to big department stores to do their shopping. City centres have been on the decline. So we can either accept that and do nothing, which we won't want to do and we don't want to do, or we can be really, really ambitious for our city centre. So again, the manifesto commitment was to have a cabinet member with specific responsibility for the city centre. We did that straight away. Deputy Leader of the Council, Councillor Peatfield, is responsible for that. She set up a task force, which is now operational. But what we've got to look at is some of our big projects in the city centre. And I describe 2025 as our Olympic year in Derby, and it absolutely is. It's so important. So the Beckerwell Performance Venue will come online, open in 2025. The Market Hall refurbishment, the roof is complete. We're now concentrate on the work inside in the Market Hall. That will be complete early next year, and we're already talking to potential occupiers and operators who want to be based in the Market Hall. So that will come online next year. Working with other organisations who are going to be part of helping us regenerate our city centre, Derby University, on the corner of Agard Street, their business centre is being thrown up as we speak. It's amazing progress they're making. That again will come online and be operational in 2025, bringing thousands of students into the city centre, creating that vibrancy in the city centre. We've just appointed a development partner, Vinci, along with Ion Developments. So they'll be bringing forward plans for the assembly room site. I've made it absolutely clear on a number of occasions, the assembly rooms needs to be demolished. It needs to be demolished quickly so we can then progress the development on that site. The Eastern Gateway, you come out of the bus station, you're faced with that awful street scene, the old pub there. So we're putting money into the Eastern Gateway to get that developed out. Albert Street, Victoria Street are undergoing some work now, but St James Street needs work on, and we've invested with a partner to bring some of those shop fronts back into use. So lots and lots of stuff happening in and around the city centre to create vibrancy where people can shop, people can live, people can work, people can go out and have a good time.
Yeah, all right.
Big year next year, absolutely. And Guildhall?
So the Guildhall, again, the position we inherited, £20 million from government was allocated to replace the assembly rooms. And if I'm being blunt, what a joke. It was never, ever going to be enough. And I said that over a year ago when that money was first allocated for that project. It was never enough. It was about a fifth, probably less than a fifth of what we actually needed. And what we said is, instead of handing that money back to government, which was an option, let's talk to the civil servants, let's talk to government and lobby for that money to stay here in Derby, but we can use it in a different way. So we put a request into government to say, look, we want to use some of that money to get the Guildhall reopened, and we want to give some of that money to Derby University so they can revamp Derby Theatre within Derby on. And after a bit of negotiation, you know what? Government realised it was the right thing to do, and they backed us in our plans. So we're keeping £20 million investment in the city. We're leading on the Guildhall. Derby University are leading on Derby Theatre. So we're doing the details now on what exactly that will mean for the Guildhall. Again, we want to get that building refurbished and reopened so the public can use it. Again, creating vibrancy in the city centre and the market square as soon as we can. So we'll bring plans forward as soon as we've done the detail of what the actual scope looks like.
Yeah. And so Derby South, big year, this year, whenever the elections are called, you're a Sinn Féin councillor, Sinn Féin and Osmaston councillor, you're leader of the council, you're Labour's candidate for Derby South. How are you managing that, and what inspired you?
Look, I was born on Harrington Street, a stone's throw away from the old pop side of the baseball ground. Went to school in Derby South, lived in Derby South for most of my life. And when the opportunity came, I just couldn't turn it down. So I stood to be the candidate. I was successful with the support of people to be the candidate.
Support of Dame Margaret Beckett.
And yes, the backing of the legendary Dame Margaret Beckett. And it's just to be the candidate is a huge honour. But I'm determined to build on what I've done in the past, in my ward, in the city, to be a good MP, hopefully when the general election's called, win that election and continue what I've been doing, fight for the people of Derby South, to make sure those voices that aren't heard are heard, and we can get that hope and aspiration back for people because 13, 14 now almost years of Conservative government has really, really left people feeling a lot worse off than they were after 13 years of a Labour government. Apathy, that lack of ambition is a massive challenge. And people's voice needs to be heard. I'm speaking to people every week. They can't get appointments to see their GP. They can't get the appointments they need to have procedures, have operations in our hospitals, because the NHS is just on its knees. Many people I speak to have given up going to see a dentist, particularly with an NHS appointment. And we've literally got to rebuild our NHS, because after 14 years of the Conservatives in power, the NHS literally is on its knees.
All right. Do you have any more?
Listen, I think that's a decent introduction to Councillor Shanker.
Yeah, I think question or dad joke.
I'll take the question.
All right. Question or dad joke?
Question, I think.
Question, right.
It's probably the right answer.
Yeah. So, Markworth has the best pizza place, yes or no?
No.
Sacre bleu.
Is it the same question for me?
No.
Okay. All right.
Why? Where's the best pizza in Derby then?
It's got to be somewhere in Derby South. It's got to be in Cinnamon, hasn't it?
Well, let's agree to disagree, Baggy. All right. Thank you very much.
Cheers, gents.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it.
See you on the next one.